Welcome, welcome, welcome. Well, folks, well. Our New York Mets being extremely aggressive, acquiring two top right-handed arms in the last couple hours, boosting our bullpen, probably top three. If you want to be generous, if you're not a Mets fan, obviously maybe top five. But regardless, the New York Mets have one of the top bullpens in all of baseball. All of baseball. Last couple years, the bullpen has always been an issue. It's always been Edwin Diaz on an island. And the bullpen has constantly been changing. David Robertson a couple years ago was supposed to be that eighth inning guy. Edwin Diaz was the ninth inning guy. He got hurt. Diaz got hurt in the WBC. Never happened. This is going to be the first time where we're going to be able to pair dynamic. Ryan Helsley is dynamic. He is a fireballer. 100 miles per hour, folks. That's what he averages on the fastball. This guy's been a very successful closer. I know the Mets paid a very steep price, but you got to understand where the New York Mets are operating, what level they are operating right now. We're going to go over the trades. We're going to go over some of the prospects, but the concept, the full picture right now is World Series. And you see all around baseball the steep prices, especially in the bullpen. So the bullpen, we already knew. Bullpen arms, they were a commodity, right? So the question leading up to this trade deadline, all right, number one, who's going to be available? All right, in the last couple of days, it became established who would be available. But then when guys heard the GMs, presidents heard the price, were these GMs, presidents, guys like David Stearns going to step up to the plate to pay the hefty price? Because that's the big thing, folks. That is the big thing. David Stearns is not the only guy that had to step up to pay this price. I mean, Philly, they had to pay a very steep price, giving up two top 100 prospects. I know, I love the trade the Phillies make. They get a guy who's going to be there for a couple years. But you know what? New York Mets, they didn't give up that price tag. They gave up a lot of stuff, but not of that level, not of that quantity. But the thing is, this is where the big boys had to operate. David Stearns knew the ceiling of this team. The ceiling of this team, folks, is World Series. It is World Series. So what was David Stearns going to step up? Was he going to step up? Today, Tyler Rogers, that was the first move. And you know what? Drew Gilbert, Blade Tidwell, Jose Butto. It sounds like a lot. It really sounds like a lot. But you know what? Put it in perspective. Blade Tidwell, end of the rotation guy, maybe a bullpen guy, right? So end of the rotation guy. I mean, I don't want to say those guys are a dime a dozen, but what's David Stearns is trying to establish what this, pitching lab, we're supposed to create and we're supposed to get many guys to that type of level. Blade Tidwell, I mean, hopefully this pitching lab, is able to develop the talent of a whole slew of pitchers in the next couple years. So Blade Tidwell is one of many guys that the Mets will develop. And end of the rotation guy, I'm not going crazy about. I'm really not going crazy about. Jose Butto, we saw at moments the guy looking good, but then we also saw a big inconsistency, right? So, okay, Taylor Rogers, I'm sorry, got to get used to the guy, has been much more consistent throughout his career, and his ceiling is much higher. I mean, you actually got a team, the Giants, and that's another reason why you had to kind of overpay or step up. I'm going to say that you had to step up because the Giants, that's not a team that's out of it. That's a team that obviously you make an enticing offer. And again, that really reflects on Stearns. How aggressive was he? I mean, we've been saying in the last couple of years how Stearns has not been aggressive. He's been tiptoeing off of the waiver wire. He's been picking up a lot of people's garbage. Folks, garbage no more. We're not picking up garbage. We are picking up top tier talent right now. Top tier talent. So I am super happy, super exciting. Excited right now. I mean, the weapons right now in the bullpen, we are really piling them up right now, piling them up. And my first thought was when we traded away Budo, I'm like, okay, we got Tyler Rogers. Budo takes kind of Budo's spot. I mean, in terms of weapons, that's a wash in the bullpen. That's a wash. So it made so much sense when we added we added a Ryan Helsley just a few short hours later. And that was the move that kind of really sealed the deal in my mind, because even though Taylor Rogers has been very successful, he's been a very talented submariner. I mean, like, Helsley is, he's just, in my opinion, on another level. He's on another level. So pairing those guys together with Edwin Diaz, Reed Garrett, it's just, it just really kind of shows you the ceiling of this team, the ceiling of this bullpen, because that's what it's been about. It's been about improving the bullpen. Last year, we had a lot of trouble, a lot of injuries. We kind of pieced it together. Phil Maton, Ryan Static. You know what? Those were the moves we made last year around the deadline. Look at those moves and compare it to this year. Ryan Static, Phil Maton, and then you look at the moves we just made. And don't forget Gregory Soto getting that fire bowler from the left side. To pair that with Brooks Raley, folks, we have a bullpen to actually do some damage in the playoffs, and that is what I'm so happy about. Juan, my man, I'm so happy right now. Honestly, I would have liked for the Mets to play a little better, but you know what? At this point right now, I'm looking forward. Let's look forward right now. It's about making sure this team is in the best position possible to make that playoff run. The last 3 games, all right, it's been a little annoying. It's been, the offense has been kind of stagnant. But you know what? These guys are human beings. I mean, I don't know who's worried about being traded. Yeah, obviously got guys like Acuna, Vientos, Beatty. Who knows? I saw McNeil, his name being tossed around. The Astros, they were sniffing around McNeil and Beatty. So, a lot of these guys, I'm pretty sure once the trade deadline passes and we see what our team looks like, I think the team will really settle in, and, the Mets can go pedal to the metal and go forward. But you know what? Bullpen was so important. And to think that David Stearns made 3 new additions. I mean, that's a huge overhaul in the bullpen. That is such a huge overhaul. And I don't think right now, in fact, I know right now you cannot call David Stearns, a non-aggressive guy. I mean, he has been very methodical, but this has been thus far an extremely, extremely an aggressive deadline for Mr. David Stearns. He's been extremely opportunistic and extremely aggressive, making the Gregory Soto trade a week before the deadline, making a trade with the Giants, a San Francisco Giants, a team that's not necessarily, weren't necessarily sellers. They weren't. David Stearns had to twist the needle. He had to make sure that team was, willing to deal one of their top pieces off of. Now, I know a lot of people are kind of concerned that, or, obviously you give up a lot of years of young talent. You give up a lot of years of young talent. Let's not go past that. And you acquire a couple guys who are rentals, right? So, that is understandable. Drew Gilbert, 6 years, Blade Tidwell, 6 years of service, that you could have utilized. But again, you got to look at the ceiling of those guys. The ceiling, you got a back of the end rotation guy. You got a guy in Drew Gilbert. Most people, most prognosticators do, forecast Drew Gilbert as a fourth outfielder, a nice player. He's 25 years old. By the time these prospects get to that age, the good prospects, the great prospects already are in the major leagues, Now, David Stearns, obviously we had the injury, or Drew Gilbert had an injury last year, so that might have probably changed his timeline. Obviously changed his timeline. The guy was hurt, but it was pretty good that Drew Gilbert was able to play the last couple weeks, because whatever value he had last year kind of took a huge dip. So I consider the team kind of lucky. You had Gilbert building his value over the last couple weeks. Tidwell had a couple bad performances. Obviously the Mets kind of strategically gave him spot starts. Tidwell could have been in the bullpen. He could have been further exposed, in my opinion. I mean, the guy has stuff, but here's the thing. If the Mets always, had in the back of their mind, like, I want to trade Budo, I want to trade Tidwell, I want to trade, Gilbert, you obviously want those prospects to shine. So, the strategy of, spot starting Tidwell here and there, and not putting him in the bullpen. I heard from, or I read from Will Salmons that the strategy, if the Mets struck out this deadline, now here's the alternative. If the Mets struck out this deadline, they didn't get a Ryan Helsley. They didn't figure out a way to get a Taylor Rogers from the Giants. The strategy was to put guys like Tidwell in the bullpen, right? In the bullpen. Would it have worked out? Would it have not worked out? Who the hell knows? But when you're going to fight for a World Series, you want guys who are proven, guys who have done it before, and guys who have had that major league success. So, obviously we have a $300 million plus payroll, and I want to put our future success of the 2025 season, I want to put it on the backs of these guys who have been successful. Okay, now, other things to consider why teams are like ultra aggressive and why the prices are so high. I mean, the deadline is looming, folks. If you're the New York Mets right now, you don't throw out 2025. When I say deadline, I mean lockout. Like, a lot of teams, I think, are kind of looking forward. I mean, this year, next year, who knows what's going to happen after 2026? You could have a lockout. You could have certain salary cap, restrictions that aren't in place now and are going to be in place in a year and a half. So, I really like that. Really kind of inspires me. It's all in, all for nothing. Now, the New York Mets, what are they going to do next? Are they going to get a pitcher? Is Sandy Alcantara on the table? Obviously, you've heard Dylan Cease. That's going to be a bit of a tough one. But I believe the New York Mets, with this all-in approach, a top-tier starting pitcher, that I wouldn't be surprised if the Mets kind of pull something that we're not thinking of. They did that with ROGERS. They, and I don't know. I mean, I think that we're going to see why Stearns is special, why Cohen has been paying the guy $10 million, because, this guy, it's about time. It's actually about time for him to earn this money. Tim, how's it going? Sorry about that. I missed your message. Let me get to it right now. So you wrote, should the Mets trade their top prospects to the White Sox for Robert Jr.? I'm going to say this in 3 words. No, no, no. Not top prospects. It's got to be the right trade, Tim. Luis Robert Jr. has potential. Obviously, the guy 2 years ago, he was an MVP caliber player, and his defensive capabilities in center field are Gold Glove caliber. He's a Gold Glove caliber center fielder. He's won that award a couple years ago, but offensively, he hasn't been of that level for almost 2 years now. In fact, his OPS plus, as I mentioned in last night's show, it was 77. That's 23 points below league average. So offensively, he hasn't even been league average. That's a guy that I'm not going to give my top prospects for. If they want to give up mid-level prospects, Mark Vientos has been the name that Chicago White Sox, like it's not the New York Mets kind of saying, hey, Chicago, here's Mark Vientos. What do you think about him? No, the Chicago White Sox, they were the ones who put it out there saying any trade that the Mets want involving Luis Robert Jr., we want Mark Vientos to headline that trade. That was the request from Chicago. My opinion, here's my opinion. My opinion is I don't like it. I don't like it. Because if you look at the offensive side of it, I know Mark Vientos is limited defensively. That goes without saying. We knew that last year. We knew that last year when we were touting Mark Vientos as the next great thing. We knew that when he was in the playoffs, more or less as a rookie dominating. But if you have that offensive production, Luis Robert Jr., and you compare it to Mark Vientos, I am so much more confident in Mark Vientos outproducing him offensively. In the last 3 weeks, Mark Vientos is hitting well over 300. In the last couple games, you see Mark Vientos is the only one really that's been, he's been kind of consistent except for today. But, Mark Vientos is a guy that I want to continue to grow. I want to continue to develop. That's just me. I mean, there are certain metrics that could probably show you that, Luis Robert Jr. in center field, trading him for a guy like Mark Vientos, you have duplicate guys. You have Ronnie Mauricio. You have Brett Beatty. You got guys who could do similar things. Plus, they could play better defense. So I could see where both sides. I just saw such a rare ability from Mark Vientos last year in New York City. When the brights were the lightest, I saw that this guy turned it up to another level, and I think that's a really special ability. There aren't many guys who have that ability, and he just got better and better. And even now, if you look at Mark Vientos, the way he's playing leading up to this deadline, he knows that potentially he could be shipped out. Most guys would be pressing. Most guys, especially young guys, that would bother them. But folks, it's not bothering Mark Vientos. In the last couple of weeks, he's actually played better. So, let the guy. He slumped the first couple of months. That's usually known as a sophomore slump. I know a lot of people are hard on Mark Vientos because that's how we are. That's how I am. I'm reactionary. Guy plays bad, you're hard on him. Guy plays, good. Hey, yeah, he's the best guy. He's the best thing since sliced bread. But right now, I'm holding tight to the fact that the guy did some pretty rare things, and I also like his ability at the plate. I like the fact that this guy goes up the middle, opposite field. He's as strong as the top players in the game. He's always in the 80th to 90th percentile in hard hit rate. So those specific stat categories, I think Mark Vientos, you can't teach really hard hit. You can't teach how, that type of raw power. Other things in terms of how disciplined the guy is, over time, with age, with experience, guys could get more discipline. But that raw power, that raw gift that we saw last year, that ability to hit under pressure, to not wilt, those things you can't teach. And I saw that last year in spades with Mark Vientos. So doesn't mean Luis Robert Jr. I wouldn't go for, but Mark Vientos, including him specifically, I just think that that's a bit of an overpay. If you want to overpay, if it's a last minute thing, it's always an option. Let's see. I could tell tomorrow it's going to be a very hectic trade deadline. You see a lot of teams being ultra aggressive. In fact, I keep refreshing Jeff Passan every couple minutes. The last couple of trades, I mean, you have the Seattle Mariners. They trade for Eugenio Suarez. And I'm not surprised. Seattle Mariners, they have been building a very young team. They've been building prospects. So, that's a deal that's perfect for them. Get that huge bat. But, Eugenio Suarez, it just didn't really seem like it was a match for the Mets. I mean, if you got him for third base, defensively, it would be a downgrade. And then you'd probably most likely have to DH him because you'd have Ronnie Mauricio at third base. But the Mets, I believe, if they got that extra bat, that extra stick in the lineup, it looks like center field is going to be the position of upgrade. Earl, what's up, Earl? You're right. I guess my Orioles are trading their whole team. Yeah. I mean, Orioles are in that mode. And it's tough too because the Orioles had such a good thing going last year. I mean, that's really tough. That is really tough. Orioles did a great job developing a lot of young talent. But in this day and age, if you're not in it, and it's going to be tough. There's so many teams ahead of the Orioles. It just seems smart to reset. Kind of like what the Mets did a couple years ago. You did that quick reset in 2023. You position yourself for 2024. You come 2 games short of the World Series, and then the Mets are continuing to build. Where did we have trouble last year? Last year when we played the Dodgers scored 8 runs a game, pitching, and more pitching. So that's why getting another starter, I'm not going to be surprised. Making these aggressive moves kind of really like signal, hey, we're going to do anything to improve this team. Another thing Will Salmon said is expect in the second half to see some of the young, talented pitchers. So is that a Jonah Tong? Is that a Brandon Sproat? I mean, I think the Mets are going to throw the most talented guys out there. So, if Frankie Montas, if we don't get, let's say, Sandy Alcantara, if we don't get an upgrade in the starting rotation, and you got a Jonah Tong, if you got a McLean, if you got, a Sproat, and they are pitching at a high level, it makes no sense to throw Montas out there and he's not going to be effective. So I think you're going to see these young guys. According to Will Salmon, Tim Britton, they said that this is their inside information that the young kids are eventually going to get a chance if the opportunity arises. So that's going to be a bit exciting as well. And again, I always wanted the team, no matter if it's a young kid or not. I don't give a damn if the guy's 22 years old. I don't give a damn if the kid has never played in the MLB. If the kid has wipeout nasty stuff and you got him to the next level, Jonah Tong, AA. I don't care he's in AA. I don't care that he's never pitched in AAA. If the guy could get major league batters out, bring the guy up. If he could do it better than the next guy being Frankie Montas or whoever, is struggling at the time, you bring up an option that you have in the organization. It is as simple as that. I don't care what his name is. I don't care how old he is. And I think, again, you see the approach, trading all these prospects, you're going to see the Mets go all in. Last year, very conservative, folks. We saw a very conservative approach around the deadline. It was frustrating. A lot of us understood what the Mets were doing. It was about development. It was about growing the young kids. But that's not what it's about. It's about putting the best man in that position to succeed. So again, expect, if the kids are the best option, expect the kids to be up. But we have another 16, 17 hours for David Stearns to legitimately upgrade this team. Big, you right. The Mets need a center fielder and a starting pitcher. How could we not be confident that the Mets are going to get this done? I mean, like, think about what the Mets have done already. Already, three top arms. If I would have told you that the reliever market was going to have an insanely high price, an insanely high buying price, would you guess that the Mets are going to get a lefty fireballer, a righty fireballer, and a submariner, out from the Giants? All three of them top echelon relievers. So you're getting three top relievers. And, Soto, maybe, since he's a lefty, I'd put him as, a top reliever. I would have never guessed if the price was that steep. Knowing Stearns' track record, he hasn't shown that ability to be aggressive. So, I love it. I love it. And, it's just kind of just shows you how, it shows you how David Stearns, I don't want to say he evolved. I mean, this might have been his plan, but, a lot of people said he's a small market guy. A lot of people were saying he only works the garbage waiver wire. He only picks up people's trash. Well, folks, we might have saw that approach in the past, but that is not our current approach. So I'm super, super excited. Super excited. Hey, what's up, buddy? Stoney. It's been a long time. It has been a long time. My fault. I apologize. A lot of things going on with work, and I like to follow my Mets 24/7. And I apologize. I'm not even going to get into that right now. I'm so happy I get to be on. We had a nice 3-hour show last night till 3 o'clock in the morning. That was awesome. Anybody who was in the room till 3 o'clock in the morning, I appreciate you. I thank you. But this is the best time of the year for. I enjoy this time. This is like it's almost like around free agent time. I just love the fact that we have an ability to vastly upgrade our team, vastly, and especially when you have a good team. Now, we have upgraded our bullpen. We certainly upgraded our bullpen, and our bullpen. So our bullpen is going to look like this. You have Edwin Diaz, Tyler Rogers, Ryan Helsley, Gregory Soto, Reed Garrett, Brooks Raley, Ryan Stanek, Rico Garcia, and Chris Davinsky. So this is you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So those are 9 guys right there. 9 guys right there. On the list, I mean, Rico Garcia had a couple good outings lately. I don't know how long he's going to be an option, especially now that you got a couple really top echelon guys. But you know what, folks? I mean, the more options, the better. The more options, the better. And I see a lot of experience on this list, a lot of talent, all-star appearances. Even Reed Garrett. Reed Garrett, since the Mets, whatever they did with him, Reed Garrett has really upped his ability to another level. Brooks Raley. I mean, it feels like we have everything. We have, soft throwers. We have left side. You got you got a little bit of everything. The Carlos Mendoza, we've given him a lot of I've given him a lot of trouble the way he kind of handles the bullpen. But, this guy's going to have every single look that he can throw at a hitter. Bryce Harper, how is he hitting against I don't know how he's hit against a guy like Tyler Rogers. Rogers, he's a guy who can do good against righties and lefties. He's just an interesting guy. I mean, have we all watched him? This Submariner guy, he almost hitting the floor. Very interesting, fun guy to watch. But his production has been a lot better than one would think. I mean, Tyler Rogers, he's a guy that he has an 83 mile per hour fastball. And let me just get these exact. All right, so he's got an 83-mile-per-hour fastball. Again, he's a submariner, but he's also a workhorse. This guy has been a workhorse since 2021, so you know you could really count on him to go 70, 80 innings. I mean, from 2021, he threw 81 innings, 2.22 ERA. 2022, 75 innings, 3.57. 2023, 74 innings, 3.04. Last couple years, 2024, 70 innings, 2.82. This year, 1.80, 53 games he's pitched in. Whip. His whip is 0.86. 0.86. Ridiculous. Ridiculous. So batters, they're not getting hits off this guy. They are not getting hits off this guy. So again, you gave up a decent amount. Budo, inconsistent, very inconsistent, and you got a guy who has been nothing but consistent. I'm just looking at Tyler Rogers, Baseball Savant. Here we go. Okay, so this is Tyler Rogers, Baseball Savant. His stats from this year, his metrics. Okay. All right, his metrics from 2025, his percentile rankings. All right, so 2025, again, 4-3, 1.80, 0.86 whip. Expected ERA, folks, expected ERA, 99th percentile, 2.13. Expected batting average, 75th percentile, still very good, 2.27. Folks, if you haven't seen him, he's not a guy who throws the ball hard. Again, he's a submariner. His fastball velocity is in the 1 percentile. So this is not the guy. We'll talk about Helsley momentarily, who is the opposite. And this is what I love about Tyler Rogers. Average exit velocity, 99th percentile. Folks, he does not get hard contact. He induces very soft contact against the batters. Do not make hard contact. That is very big in the major leagues. So this guy is in the 99th percentile in average exit velocity. Very impressive. Chase percentage, 79th percentile. But here's something else I really like. He's a submariner, and his control, I got to say, is flawless. He is in the 99th percentile in base on balls. How many times do we go, we're in the 8th inning, and you bring somebody in 7th, 8th inning, Ryan Stanek, walking 3 and 4 men. This guy is not like that. He will not walk 3 or 4 guys. Watch him do it now that I'm saying it. But this guy is in the 99th percentile based on balls. Barrel percentage, 100 percentile. Again, hard hit percentage, 94th percentile. And another great thing about him, ground ball percentage, 99th percentile. This guy induces ground balls. So what does he throw? Nothing special here, folks. He throws a sinker, nasty sinker, and a nasty slider. The sinker he uses 75% of the time. That's what induces most of the ground balls. And then he has a slider. 2 pitches, folks. 2 pitches. Throws 83 miles per hour on average. And the guy has been dominant. So I love it. I love it. Juan, I like that. God mode bullpen. They really upgraded their bullpen. Certainly upgraded their bullpen. And, we've seen a lot of teams in the last couple of years, you're only going to go as far as your bullpen. pitching, the more arm and the more talent you have, the more options. I mean, God forbid the Mets go to a 3-man rotation in the playoffs. Who the hell knows what happens with injuries? Combs is kind of going to be in uncharted territory. David Peterson, in terms of innings pitched, he's going to be in uncharted territory. So you may have to rely on your bullpen to go to bullpen games. You may have to rely on your bullpen to ask a lot of them. So you're going to need as much talent, as much diversity in terms of arm talent as possible. So, this is something David Stearns has looked into the future and determined that this is what you need. And we all know this. We all know very intelligent, fans on this channel. We know that pitching is obviously what it's all about. But you know what? That being said, we got to be consistent with hitting as well. And I think David Stearns, I feel we're going to get not only I feel we're going to get a bat, but I feel we're going to get a bat that it's got to be a talented bat, but also something that really kind of jumpstarts his lineup. This lineup is, again, way too inconsistent. And if you're going all in on the bullpen, that's why I got to feel that we're going to get a bat, center fielder, and we're going to get another starting pitcher. And the funny thing is, a week and a half ago, I drew out the list: lefty reliever, possibly a righty reliever, starting pitcher, and a bat. I mean, that's 4 additions. I thought that was a high ask, but right now we already got 3 bullpen additions. So David Stearns is probably going to go. I'm saying full bore, so I'm not going to be surprised at whatever he does. What's up, bud? Yeah. What's up, my friend? I love the trades, but we need a bat before 6 p.m. tomorrow. Yeah. And based on the way we've been aggressive, how could we not expect the bat? How could we not expect the bat? I mean, we had a gentleman, a fan from Baltimore. I know Baltimore has actually been wheeling and dealing. Okay, sorry. But in terms of the bat, we've been looking at some of the same options the last couple of weeks: the Cedric Mullins, the Luis Robert Jr. Obviously, Eugenio Suarez was an option. He was already traded to the Mariners, but David Stearns has been a bit creative. David Stearns has looked a bit outside the box, engaging with teams like the Giants, teams like the Cardinals, who just decided they were willing to make some moves on the selling side. So if there's a bat out there, there might be a bat out there that we're not thinking of that David Stearns is exploring. I mean, that would be ultra exciting. I mean, if you think back to the David Stearns history of him getting a guy like Christian Yelich years and years ago, that was a big, huge trade. I mean, is that something in the cards that we would do? I know you have, the Mets right now. You have a lot of young kids that could potentially come up within the next year or two. Specifically Jet Williams, Carson Bench. I mean, Carson Bench is dominating right now in Double-A, dominating. You expect those guys to come up within the next year or two. So, does that mean that David Stearns is going to be looking for a more short-term option? I didn't see anything as of late. Cedric Mullins, I believe he's still available on the Orioles, but that seems like a guy that would be a perfect upgrade for David Stearns. Now, for Mets fans, I'm not really sure how Mets fans would feel with that upgrade. Cedric Mullins, I believe he has 14, 15 home runs. 4 or 5 years ago, a lot different. It feels like he kind of evolved as a hitter and, downgraded a bit. So I'm not sure how many people will be happy about that move. But I gotta trust David Stearns. I gotta trust that he has assessed this team, the talent, and I'm gonna predict we're gonna have another surprise move. I'm gonna predict just like Tyler Rogers, we're gonna see a surprise move tomorrow from the bat, perspective. Oh boy, folks, 1:15 in the morning. 1:15 in the morning. So we got 12, we got about 17 hours before the trade deadline. This is exciting. So 16, 17 hours. Um I'm really happy about the bullpen because this is I didn't expect us to get three arms. I didn't. I really didn't. I didn't expect Stearns to be this aggressive. I didn't expect him to step up. I didn't expect that. That first move for Tyler Rogers, when I heard that, I was at work and I'm looking at the trade. And first, I see Blade Tidwell, and right off the bat, Blade Tidwell has always been a guy since we drafted him in 2023. I'm like, this guy's got a live arm. I want to see him. I want to see more of him. I got a little downgraded on my opinion of him when he made a couple spot starts, but still, obviously that's not the end all be all. These kids need to be developed. Drew Gilbert, he was included. I'm like, wow, Drew Gilbert and Blade Tidwell. Okay, you know what? And then you get Jose Budo on top of that. But you reason to yourself, and then you look at the end goal. If we win a World Series, and it's totally viable. That's why there's a lot of teams that are aggressive. They know that the landscape of MLB right now is wide open right now, wide open. And the bullpen again is a key. The other team can't win if the other team can't score. The other team can't win if the other team can't score. Very important. But again, as we mentioned, we mentioned the hitting. The hitting on the flip side, the more we hit, takes more pressure off of the pitchers. If we do better from the offensive side, if we could somehow get some consistency, and when we say consistency, obviously you want the young kids to produce. Mark Vientos, Brett Beatty, Cunha, if these guys stay in the team, you want them to produce. Francisco Alvarez, but still, I'm looking for the top of the lineup to be a bit more consistent. Besides Brandon Nimmo, if you look back to early June, he's the only guy that's been consistent. Only guy that's been consistent in the last 2 months. Juan Soto had a monster June and tailed off in July in terms of batting average, tailed off a bit. So if you look at the whole thing, Juan Soto, $800 million. April, not so good. May, not so good. June, all world. And July, more or less mediocre. He's got to be more consistent when he comes back. Pete Alonso, he's tailed off a bit. Started off really good. So in terms of offensive consistency, you need the top of the lineup. And the top of the lineup, the stats, in terms of overall stats, their OPS is like in that top 5 if you compare them to other top 4, top 5. So yeah, that's fine. That's good. But I need consistency from Lindor. Lindor, went 0 for 31, had a couple hot games, and the last couple of games he's been cold again. So Lindor needs to be more consistent. Juan Soto needs to be Juan Soto. Pete needs to have that version that he captured the first 2.5 months. And then you need the kids to kind of step up. And I think you're going to see an upward trajectory from guys like Ronnie Mauricio and Mark Vientos. Mark Vientos, you've seen in the last 3 weeks, his average has been over 300. He's been going the other way, going up the middle. What that tells me is he's being more patient. He's being more selective, more disciplined at the plate. So that's why I'm eager to keep Mark Vientos. I want to keep him. Ronnie Mauricio, I think he has superstar potential. I'm not saying he's going to be a superstar this year, but Ronnie Mauricio is freaking dynamic. So I don't want to see him anywhere near a trade. Other teams, yes, is that a guy I'd want to trade for? Ronnie Mauricio, in my eyes. I mean, I started this channel about 3 years ago. I think one of my first videos was about how explosive Ronnie Mauricio was. He got hurt, last year, this and that. So his progression got slowed. But this guy always reminded me, and I'm not saying this as an insult, but he always reminded me the way he profiled as a poor man's Hley de la Cruz. And when I say poor man's, I kind of mean he reminds me of the guy. Kind of reminds me of the guy. Maybe he doesn't have as quite the, in terms of the stolen bases, but this, he could from the left side, super talented, super talented, and obviously was a shortstop. He's got a glove. I want to see Ronnie Mauricio grow with the organization for a very long time. And Mark Vientos, he's always been that Pete Alonso insurance too. So I don't want to forget that. Next year, would we rather pay Mark Vientos, the little money we're going to be paying him and hopefully getting that upward production, or do you want to go out pay a good first baseman $20 to $25 million? I know there are a lot of good options, but still, again, like Mark Vientos is a guy that I still want to grow with this organization. Juan, I think that's true. Juan writes, Vientos is our DH moving forward. And I really think that's fine. That's fine. In our history, since the Mets, it's been 5 years, 4 or 5 years since they've had a DH in the National League. I always thought that would be so beneficial for the Mets, so beneficial. But we've never had utilized that position like we really should have. Vogelbach a couple years ago, that was pathetic. That was pathetic. But we've never really had a masher as our DH. So if he grows as a DH, first base, plays backup first base, backup in corner infield, that's fine. I think he could be very, extremely productive. I would love that. I would love that. Doesn't have to worry about the field, just worry about hitting. And when Mark's going the other way and Mark's hitting the ball up the middle, there's no one better. I don't want to say no one better, but I like the kid, so I always bring him up. And as Juan, you write, Beatty and Acuna got to go. So my list before the trade deadline, I said guys that I don't mind go. I didn't have Beatty on it, but I had Acuna on it. I had Drew Gilbert on my list. I had Blade Tidwell on the list. Jose Budo, I didn't have on the list, but the reason why I didn't have him on the list was I wasn't sure if he had any high value. I would have had him on the list. But Nate Dom, he got traded. I had him on my list. So the good thing about David Stearns is our untouchable guys, our top prospect, and our guys that aren't quite in the top 5, top 10, guys who will be developed within the next year or two. They'll be our future top prospects. We haven't dealt any of those guys. I mean, Baez, that was our highest prospect. He was our sixth ranked prospect. But what was he? He was, an infielder. He was never really going to play here. He wasn't really going to play here in the next couple of years. So, that was a depth position for us. So I think that's fine. Dealing one of those guys off, that is how you churn and burn. You develop prospects for two reasons. Again, I say this over and over. You develop prospects to either to bring up and utilize them on the major league roster, or you develop and build prospects. You build their value to trade them. So how many prospects in the last 10 years that we touted went on to be crap? Went on to be nothing. Even top prospects, Jared Kelenic, that's probably one of the top guys in the last 5-6 years. Since we traded him for Edwin Diaz, all hell broke loose when Brody Van Wagenen made that trade. It was actually funny. Brody Van Wagenen made that trade. You know, you take Robbie Cano back. It was a disaster at the time, but you got Edwin Diaz. You got a lights out closer for the next couple of years, and Edwin Diaz in 2022 when the Mets won 101 games, and Edwin Diaz was one of the best closers in baseball, the best closer in baseball. Excuse me. He had one of the best reliever performances that year in all of MLB. So he had a dominating performance that year. So that really elevated us. Then we fell apart of the playoffs against the Padres. But you could see how having a dominant closer elevates the team. Now, adding around that dominant closer with other guys who have the potential to be dominating. And we didn't talk about Ryan Helsley yet. I'm going to get to Ryan Helsley. I'm going to get to his stuff. I'm going to get to that trade. I didn't really talk about that trade yet. But Ryan Helsley, again, I had a ranking. He was the sixth best reliever on my ranking sheet. I'm sorry, he was the fifth. He was the fifth best on my ranking sheet. But, there were a couple really top relievers, and the reason why I ranked other guys above Helsley is because they had more time left. Helsley, the only kind of negative about him is he's a 2-month rental, but according to the Mets approach, it don't matter. If you're all in right now, you're all in. And if you can get a talented guy like Helsley, and Helsley, again, a guy who averages 100 miles per hour on the fastball, I mean, you do it every day, all day long. So that is good. Actually, Juan, we could probably say that. I think at first, and Juan's alluding to the fact that the Mets actually won the trade for Diaz. I think at first it was like this. The Mets got blown out with that trade. Like, we got embarrassed. Then as time went on and Kelenic didn't really amount to nothing, it was like, okay, it was a wash. The Mets had to eat a lot of money on Cano's contract. Cano didn't produce. Remember, we were supposed to get that 3-hitter in Cano, right? Diaz was a side piece. I mean, obviously you get a good closer, but or maybe not a side piece, but he was almost as big part of that. Cano was almost as big as Diaz in that trade. So they were both like big anchors. You have Cano being your number 3 man in the lineup, and you have Diaz being your lights out closer. So Cano, obviously no production at all. And then, Diaz just became lights out. So you're probably 100% right in terms of the Mets really kind of winning that trade, despite having to eat all of the Cano money. All right, you know what? Let's talk about the Ryan Helsley trade. Okay, so the Mets acquire Ryan Helsley, traded away infielder Jesus Baez, right-handed pitcher Nate Dom, and right-handed pitcher Frank Ellisalt. And for the Cardinals' perspective, they get 2 of the Mets' top 15 prospects. Nobody, I believe, in the top 100. I don't think Baez was in the top 100. Baez was the Mets' number 8 prospect. Nate Dom was the Mets' number 14th prospect. And Frank Ellisalt, he wasn't ranked. He wasn't in the top 30. So again, no top 100 prospects. You got to give up something. You got to give up something to get. Like Nate Dom, again, like I believe when I saw his projection, he projects as a reliever and back of the rotation guy. But I'm not really worrying about that. Helsley is freaking nasty. I mean, this is a guy that I was hoping the Mets would trade for a couple years ago. But you know what? It's never too late to get talent. This year, he's pitched in 36 games. He's 3-1, 3.0 ERA, 10.3 strikeouts per 9, 1.389 whip, which, you compare that with Tyler Rogers, right? Tyler Rogers' whip is 0.80, and Helsley's whip is 1.389. So he gives up a little more in terms of hits, but he's filthy. He's filthy. Last year, Helsley was 7-4 with a 2.04 ERA. He was actually last year ninth in the Cy Young Award winning. That's how filthy he was last year. But I'm going to bring up Baseball Savant so we can actually look at what he brings to the table. And folks, I appreciate everybody. In the chat in the room right now, 1:30 in the morning. I really gotta thank you. If you can like, it really helps out the channel. I do appreciate everybody. And let's bring up this Baseball Savant. Okay, there's one thing about Helsley that is kind of, I don't want to say negative, but it's been a bit of something, a little bit of a concern. All right, so I'm going to go over that with you right now. All right, so this is the percentile rankings for Helsley. Okay, so we have a lot of red here. Expected ERA 3.52. 3.52 is a little worse than his actual ERA, so he's had a little bit of luck. Expected batting average 240. But if you go back to last year, these were all, last year expected batting average 212, expected ERA 2.72. So if anything, the Mets actually kind of traded for him, when his value was a bit down. All right, so his fastball velo is 99.3. Extreme fireballer, this guy, 99.3. If you're wondering what Edwin Diaz's fastball velocity this year, Edwin Diaz is 97.0. So he averages 2.3 more miles per hour on the fastball than Diaz. Now, here's been a little bit of trouble, and that's why, his whip is a little higher. Average exit velocity, 91.5. So that means the batters are hitting the ball, a bit harder than, you want off of Helsley. Just curious. Last year, it was in the 32nd percentile. Okay, so that's been like the only thing, that batters are hitting the ball a little hard, but that's nothing to really worry about. The chase percentage, 94th percentile, whiff percentage, 86th percentile, K percentage, 77th. Based on ball, he doesn't have as good as control as Tyler Rogers, but not many pitchers do. He's in the 37th percentile in base on balls. Barrel 72nd, hard hit 15 percentile. Again, that kind of goes hand in hand with average exit velocity. So I'm not surprised those two are not great. And ground ball percentage, another guy not as elite as the ground ball percentage as Tyler Rogers. Tyler Rogers was in the 99th. He is in the 70th percentile in ground ball percentage. So that's still very, very good. He sports a slider, a four-seamer, a curve, and a cutter. Tyler Rogers was a two-pitch pitcher. Ryan Helsley is almost the same. He throws a slider 48% of the time, a four-seamer 45%. He has two other pitchers that he rarely throws, a curve only 5% and a cutter 2%. But again, very nasty. Juan, mentioned it. Wipeout slider. 100 mile per hour fastball. So it's just very nasty stuff. Very nasty stuff. I'm just looking at some of his advanced metrics. Ground ball rate. He induces a ground ball 45% of the time. I'm talking about Ryan Helsley. And that is actually up significantly from last year. Last year, he induced ground balls 36% of the time. So the Mets, traditionally in the last under the David Stearns regime, they look for guys who induce ground balls. I mean, that's why Mark Vientos, his defense at third base, or a lack of defense at third base, has always been an issue for Stearns. Getting guys who induce ground balls. You have Ronnie Mauricio, two shortstops on the left side. Ronnie Mauricio, and obviously you have Francisco Lindor, Gold Glove caliber shortstop, and Ronnie Mauricio, who has been ascending, on the defensive side. And so that is really good. That is good. The average exit velocity, again, that's a little high. The OPS that Helsley gives up this year, or the batting average against, is 6.694. So it's 694. Last year was 549. I just see a very big ceiling with Helsley, especially in the eighth inning. He doesn't have to, close anymore. So, I'm just very interested seeing that dynamic presence in the eighth inning. And I'm also looking at his postseason record. His postseason only pitched 8 games. So, let's put it in perspective. Postseason for Helsley is pitched in 8 games, 5.63 ERA. Not that great, but only 8 games, only 8 innings in total. And actually, one game, one outing where he allowed 4 runs in 2022. That was actually what kind of really hurt him. But also, I want to be clear, this is years ago. I'm looking at 2019, 2020, and 2022. So that's a long ways back. They actually had a trade proposal where the Mets, they were getting Stephen Kwan, and this proposal was done before the Mets made any trade. But the trade proposal was that the Mets receive Stephen Kwan and the Guardians receive uh, Tidwell, Jet Williams, and Calvin Ziegler. So obviously Ziegler, and I mean, that's a prospect I'm not really touting at all. So I mean, the only thing in there is Jet Williams. So I mean, Jet Williams and Tidwell for Stephen Kwan. I mean, that was proposed yesterday. Um, I mean, I'm not really sure what type of appetite Mets fans would have for getting Kwan for Jet Williams. I mean, Quan, he's always been like a nice little player. Plays left field, plays outfield. He's 5'8", 170 pounds, 27 years old. He is, and honestly, I don't think he's an option. I'm just, kind of going over this last rumor. He is signed through 2028, or that's when he becomes a free agent. So, you have him for 2 years after this season. And not a power guy. He's got a career average of 2.85. Good defensive player. I'm sorry, great defensive player. 3 Gold Gloves he's won already. Two-time All-Star. He's about a 4 WAR player per season. Averages about 8-9 home runs a season. And again, 285 career batting average. I mean, he is a very, very good glove. He's got good speed. But, a lot of Met fans, I mean, I'm pretty sure Mets fan would probably say Jet Williams profiles very similar to a guy like Steven Kwan, and Jet Williams, kind of profiles as better on base and better with the slug. So, I don't know. I mean, that really kind of doesn't really excite me. I mean, the guy's got a really great glove. He's got a great glove. I don't know. Maybe Jet Williams is a guy that is not the right guy to include, but it would be a decent upgrade in terms of the glove. But I just don't want to include Jet Williams. I think the guys that are going to come down to be traded are Luis Robert Jr. and it's going to be Cedric Mullins, or it's going to be a guy we don't expect. Oh, Joel, great. I'm sorry, I completely forgot that. Brandon Lowe. Mispronounce that all the time. He's also been a lot of people's radars. I believe Jim Bowden, a couple of days ago, he mentioned that the Mets we're really looking into Brandon Lau. He's a person I look into because of the fact that the price is going to be much, much lower. I believe he's a free agent after this season. And, Lau, very solid player, very solid professional bat. And you're not going to have to give up your top one or top two prospects. I mean, that's the only thing. I'm not taking anything away from a guy like Steven Kwan, all world type of player. I just don't want to give up any top two, top one prospects right now. Brandon Lau is similar capabilities, second baseman, and primarily plays second base and outfield. He's having a very good season, 19 home runs, 50 RBIs, batting 270, 800 OPS. Very productive player throughout his career. He would be a very productive bat. And, he's not only a rental, he's also a guy that you would have a team option to bring him back for 2026. So you would have him for a year and a half. He's on the Tampa Bay Rays. So the Mets have had a relationship with the Rays over the last couple of years. I mean, that's an option that I probably look at just because I got to assume the price is not going to be as high as a guy like Steven Kwan. So Luis Robert Jr., Brandon Lau, Cedric Mullins would probably be a lot lower on the list. But again, he does play center field. He does fit the position of need. He does play decent outfield defense. In fact, you know what? Let me bring up his advanced stats, Cedric Mullins. I just kind of brought up the baseball savant of Cedric Mullins. At first glance, doesn't look too impressive. All right, so this is Mullins baseball savant, his percentile rankings. The very important factors with Mullins is he's 30 years old, he plays center field, he's 5'8", and he is a free agent after this season, so he would be a complete rental. Now, Mullins has in the past has had, very productive years, or not years. I'd say he had a very productive year a couple years ago. But I feel he's been chasing that one season. Let me check that season. It was so it was in 2021. He was an all-star, 30 home runs, 59 RBIs, batted 291, won a Silver Slugger, came in ninth in the MVP. He's kind of been chasing that one big year. This year, 15 home runs, 49 RBIs, 226 batting average, 303 on base. So, offensively, his OPS plus is 104, so that's 4 points above the league average. So you're not talking about a very dynamic player here. You're talking about him as an upgrade over what we have in center field. So he has 15 home runs, batting 229. Like, for example, right now, our current production that we've had from center field this year is 4 home runs, and I believe the batting average is around 200. So, you could see him in terms of pop is a little better than that. So that's a little bit of an upgrade. He's got range. He's in the range. He's in the 77th percentile. So he could, obviously go get it out there. But the other problem with Mullins is he's got no arm. His arm value is in the 1 percentile and arm strength in the 45 percentile. So his arm strength is not that big. He doesn't have that much arm strength. And then you look at these offensive categories. Expected WOBA 11th percentile, expected batting average 4, slug 18, exit velocity 33. So the only decent thing you have is base on ball. The guy's a little patient, 66th percentile. Even if we go last year whiff percentage, I mean, that wasn't not that great numbers. So you got to go back to 2021 and you have some more red. You have some more metrics where he's better than league average. So league average is over 50. So you got to go back to 2021. And in 2021, his range was 97. So that also is a bit concerning that somebody's range, and I'm not sure how they evaluate these metrics, but he goes from a 97 to a 77. And his sprint speed also went from upper 90s to 80. So again, I'm not sure how they evaluate those type of metrics, but he's a guy that is a little bit of an upgrade over what you have, and it pushes Taylor back to the number 4 spot, and you have a guy Tyrone Taylor to the number 4 outfielder, that is, and then you have Cedric Mullins that you can plug in there. He's a lefty bat. I'm not that crazy about that. I'm not that crazy about that upgrade. Let me bring up the advanced numbers of Luis Robert Jr. Okay, all right. Luis Robert Jr. is not having obviously a good offensive season. He hasn't had a good offensive season, or I'd say above average offensive season since 2023. But his metrics aren't as bad as Mullins. So I mean, he's got more tools. I'll say that he has got more tools. In 344 plate appearances this year, 11 home runs, 27 stolen bases, 27 stolen bases, folks. So the Mets they're stealing bases this year, so that fits right in. 213 batting average, 300 on base, 353 slug, 653 OPS, all way below average. But he's got speed. He's got the speed tool. Base running, 78th percentile in base running. Fielding run value, 82nd percentile. He's in the range, 88th percentile. So, in terms of him being a center fielder, I'd much rather have him in center field. He's obviously, I forgot if I mentioned this, but he's won a Gold Glove. He's in the 88th percentile in range. He's in the 80th percentile in arm value. So he's got decent arm strength, and he's got decent sprint speed. He's almost in the 90th percentile in sprint speed. So he's got an arm, he's got legs. So in terms of 5 tools, he has decent tools. He really does. I'd say he probably has 3 out of the 5 tools right now. The power tool and the hit tool, but he's got defense, he's got running, and the arm looks good. So 3 out of 5 tools, not so bad. I mean, I'm not going to pay a lot for him, but, he does have some tools. The bat speed is in the 94th percentile. He has a bat speed of 75.8. And, surprisingly, the base on balls is in the 73rd percentile. So the good thing is, if you look at potential, you bring it back a couple years. He wasn't as patient. He was in the 7th percentile. This was his almost, when he was in the 12th place for MVP. A lot better with slug, a lot better with barrel percentage, a lot better with sweet spot. Bat speed was always a good thing. So he's got bat speed. He's got arm strength. He's got good range. He's a fast runner. So he does have legitimate tools. But, again, the hit tool is lacking. The hit tool is certainly lacking. So, again, how aggressive is Stearns going to be, and how much does he value Luis Robert Jr.? Again, I'd much rather have him patrolling center field than a Cedric Mullins. I would. And then if you could somehow out, if David Stearns, and their hitting program, hitting coaches could figure out what the deal was between Robert in 2023 and now, and you can somehow unlock that. If you can unlock that, and I mean, you can have some type of legit weapon. If you can unlock some of those tools from 2023 when he hit 38 home runs, when he was slugging over 500, I mean, we're talking about a guy who was in the MVP conversation. That'd be a nice outfield. Nimmo, Robert Jr., and Soto. And then if somehow they could pull it off without trading Vientos, you got Vientos at DH, you got Mauricio at third, you got Lindor at short, you got Beatty at second, providing they don't trade any of these guys, Alonso at first, and then you got Alvarez behind the plate at catcher. So, I mean, folks, that is a good offensive team. You have Winker on the bench, you have Marte on the bench. So, I mean, you're building a pretty good team. Again, obviously the team's got to be offensively consistent. And then, if we have this all-in approach, you gotta figure that the Mets are going to find a way to get some type of starting pitcher. And if they don't, maybe the backup plan is maybe they plan to bring up a Jonah Tong. Maybe they plan to try Brandon Sproat out. Maybe, again, they slot these guys in the back of the rotation. Yeah, Eric Chavez isn't capable of turning him around. Well, maybe there's another coach, an unsung coach on the end of the bench that can kind of turn him around, or somebody in the front office. I mean, I don't care who the hell exposes what he's not doing right or not doing that he did a couple of years ago. The guy's 27 years old. I mean, that's why it's a bit of a mystery that Robert Jr. Is declining this much. like he turns 26 and he all of a sudden loses it offensively. It's the thing that somebody brought up yesterday, and I thought it was actually a pretty good point. And they brought up this point with Alcantara too, is these guys are very competitive. They're very, big on competition. And if you're playing on the Chicago White Sox day in, day out, lousy organization, lousy ball club, a guy that's a competitor, maybe that is something that's deterring this guy from reaching his potential. I don't know. I don't want to make excuses for the guy. Same thing with Sandy Alcantara. Sandy Alcantara in the last two starts, the guy's rumored to be traded out of there. And now all of a sudden he starts pitching like Sandy Alcantara of a couple of years ago. So, these guys, I think there is something to playing in for a team that's a perennial loser and then moving this player to a team that is vying for a World Series. I mean, you put Robert Jr. next to Juan Soto between, wherever you put him in the lineup, Lindor, Alonso. I don't know where you want to put him in the lineup, but you're going to put him next to these all-star players, all-world players, Juan Soto. I got to think that that's going to have a positive impact on the way Luis Robert Jr. prepares and plays the game. Again, these guys are competitive. This guy's 27 years old. Funny thing, Juan Soto, 26 years old. These guys are all similar in age. Mark Vientos is 25. So I like the fact that we are getting, younger on this team. Already assuming Roberts is on the team, but we'll see. We'll see. I do think that, if you get a guy like that, a guy will step up his game, just like Alcantara. I mean, Alcantara, that's the big fish. That is going to be the big fish. I would say out of anybody right now, we took care of the bullpen. That's the number one piece for me to get, Alcantara. If anybody could think of another piece that you would rather get, whether he's a bat, whether you want to get another arm, I don't think you need to spend any more of our chips on any bullpen arm. Who would you rather get right now? Who's the number one acquisition that you would want to get? In my opinion, I think it's Alcantara. But so Juan, if it's not Alcantara for you, who is it? Sorry, I need something to drink. And I'm looking at Alcantara's potential. I know his ERA sucks right now. Iced tea, folks. Iced tea. Merrill Kelly. All right, Merrill Kelly. Okay, let me bring up his baseball savant. I know Merrill Kelly. He's 36 years old. He's actually having a really good season this year. That's actually a pretty good option. I believe he's a free agent after this year. Yeah, he signed through 2025, so he's going to be a rental. So, I mean, if you compare him with Alcantara, I mean, I believe that the price has to be lower than an Alcantara, and the guy's he's producing. He's actually producing. So, that's a pretty good option. The reason why I go with Sandy Alcantara is I know the ceiling. I'm looking at the ceiling. The ceiling, the floor is probably lower with the an Alcantara, but the ceiling, if this guy somehow, turns back the clock, and also with Alcantara, remember he's coming back from a very serious injury, but it's an injury that over time players get better at, or improve over time. All right, here we go. Here we go. Mr. Merrill. Okay, so Merrill Kelly. So these are some of his percentile rankings from this year. So I mean, it's things that are impressive. Pitching run value, 93rd percentile. Breaking run value, his specific pitches, 82nd percentile. Off speed run value, 98th percentile. So, and I mean, he's got a really good pitch mix, changeup, 26 percentage of the time. So I mean, change up pitcher, four seam fastball. He throws that 25% of the time. Wow. So I didn't realize he's got a 6 pitch mix. Chase percentage, 79th percentile. Base on ball, 64th percentile. Ground ball percentage. Again, we talk about the Mets wanting guys who, induce ground balls, homes. A lot of the pitchers that they just acquired induce ground balls. He induces ground balls at a 65 in the 65 percentile, so that's good. And his base on ball percentage is not bad. Not really a strikeout pitcher. He's in the 58th percentile. Expected batting average, 253, 43rd percentile. Expected ERA, 3.88. And his legit ERA is 3.22. So actually, he's had a little luck go his way. But, he's a guy, if the price is right, he's an upgrade over a guy like Frankie Montas. Certainly an upgrade over Frankie Montas. And I'll tell you this, Juan, he is legitly a safer option than Sandy Alcantara because you're going to probably, even though there is a higher upside, it's a safer bet. It's certainly a safer bet. And he's a guy that I think is an improvement over a Montas. Is improvement over a Montas. So that's a pretty good one. I like that one. Montaz is a bum. Well, honestly, unfortunately, he's our bum right now. That was one of the signings that I was never high on, giving him $17 million, but the Mets apparently saw something at the end of last year that intrigued them. They went with it. And I mean, even other players that got a lot less money than him, I would have preferred, but it is what it is. Montaz is on our team, and we have to utilize his skills to the best. I'm looking at Mitch Keller right now. How many years? So Mitch Keller is 29 years old. Oh, I didn't realize Mitch Keller. So Mitch Keller, he's a free agent in 2029. So he's actually signed through age 32, and he's going to be making 16 mil next year, 17 mil next year, 18 million in 2027, and 20 mil in 2028. So he's got 3 years left, Mitch Keller. This year, he's 4-10 with a 3.69 ERA. Obviously, he's pitching on the Pirates. Not a great organization. We know that. His whip is 1.205. His career ERA is 4.45. So he's having, ERA wise, he's not a big strikeout guy. But he's a guy. This is the perfect example of a player who I don't think has hit his stride. Like he's the perfect example of a player who's on a bad team that I'd love to see a guy like this, a guy that's got talent, a guy that you put him in an organization like the Mets who have their pitching lab. What could they do with a guy like this? Because his overall numbers, then they don't blow you away. I mean, he's got a career 4.45 ERA. I'm going to bring up some of his advanced numbers so we can look at that together. But again, all these options, we're comparing it to Frankie Montas. We're comparing it to the end of our rotation. And all we want to do is upgrade. All right, so this is the Mitch Keller percentile rankings. Okay, so again, he's got a 6-pitch mix. He's got a 93.7 mile per hour fastball, not a fireballer. 4-seamer, sweeper, slider, sinker, curveball, changeup. I think in terms of this year, a guy like Merrill Kelly would probably be a safer bet than either, a guy like this. Mitch Keller, obviously, he's got 3 years left on the contract. So he's a guy that you could develop over the next course of the next couple of years. But they're both decent options. But if I had to choose one for this season, I'd actually go with Merrill Kelly. Joel, you're right. Blackburn should be DFA'd. Like the most recent thing that I saw, a news article that I saw about Blackburn, was that the Mets actually had him out on the market. So the Mets are trying to see if any team right now, if they're interested in an extra starting pitcher, how much they would pay for Blackburn. And honestly, folks, I don't mind that at all. I don't mind shopping guys like Blackburn that, last year it was a disappointing. If we would have made the right move, and I always go back to Jack Flaherty. Jack Flaherty, you put him, instead of putting him on the Dodgers, you put him on the Mets. Not that he was an all-world pitcher, but, he would have been an extra decent arm that we could have used down the stretch. When you say Suarez, you mean Eugenio Suarez? Because, yeah, thanks, Juan. He's going to the Mariners. It was like a late move. I think it happened around midnight. I saw Jeff Passan. He reported that the Mariners, and in credit to them, they got a good farm system. They made a very aggressive move for Eugenio Suarez. I think it's pending physical, so it's not official. But yeah, Suarez is going to the Mariners. That supposedly was the biggest bat on the market. Again, Stearns pulled a couple moves out of his back pocket. Let's see if maybe he can pull a bat out of his back pocket. I mean, sometimes you just never know like how guys are gonna regress. Let me bring up one guy who I wanted the Mets to pursue over the offseason. His value might have been actually too high for the Mets to pursue. I don't know if the Met, in terms of trade value, his trade value was actually high at the time, but the guy from the Rockies. And, some of you might remember that I mentioned this gentleman, Brenton Doyle, not having a good year, not having a good year. He's 27 years old, but last year he was coming off of a very good year. 4 WAR, 23 home runs, 72 RBIs, 260 batting average. The reason why I wanted him was he was a 2-time Gold Glover. The guy has a cannon for an arm, and offensively, I thought he was just coming into his own. Apparently, this year, not doing well. I mean, here's a guy that maybe if Stearns wants to get at a very low value, you could bring in a guy that's a 2-time Gold Glover, a guy that's value right now is very very low, and has potential to hit over 20 home runs, 70 RBIs, batted 260 last year. I know he's in Colorado. He strikes out a lot, so there are downsides to it, but at the very least, he is a 2-time Gold Glover, and I believe he's like in a 99 percentile in arm strength. So, this is an outside the box move that, hey, nobody expects. The Rockies, they're not in anything right now in terms of contending. So, this is just an example of, hey, maybe the Stearns pull something out of the air that none of us expect. And I'm not saying any of us would want this at this point. The guy's not having a great offensive year, but again, the guy's a great Gold Glove award-winning center fielder. If anybody wants, the Ultimate Sports Network will be starting his trade deadline stream at 6 a.m. Eastern because the news and rumors have really died down for tonight. Probably a good idea. Um, the funny thing is, my work schedule, unfortunately, I want to do this during the day, but gotta work. Damn it. Mets Harrison Bader. Who the hell wants Harrison Bader? Harrison Bader is actually having a decent offensive season this year. I think he has like 11 home runs, which was what he hit last year. But me personally, I don't. I've had. I think we've been there with Harrison Bader. That wouldn't really be my upgrade. 31 years old. I mean, wins above replacement. He's got a 2.7, not bad. 12 home runs, 38 RBIs, 254 batting average, 336 on base. I just would feel bad just giving up anything of value for him right now. And he's got a mutual option for $10 million. I just don't want to go down the Harrison Bader tree right now. I know he's friends with Pete Alonso, so Pete Alonso might like that, but at this point, it's not about friends. It's about winning. All right, folks. I'm gonna call it quits for tonight. But again, I'm gonna be on tomorrow night. So if anybody's around, stop by. I appreciate everybody for sticking around. We'll do a nice stream tomorrow as well. Again, thank you. Hopefully, we got something really great to talk about. I honestly, I have confidence. You got aggressive Stearns right now. Stearns is going to bed right now. Hopefully, in his aggressive mode, he's going to wake up in his aggressive mode, and we're going to make some moves. And it's about 2025. So let's put that in perspective. 2025, the goal is to win a World Series. All the moves look like they're going to be in that line of thinking. So we'll see what happens tomorrow. I wish everybody a great night. Thank you so much for sticking with me. I wish everybody the best. Have a great night's sleep. All right, everybody, good night again, and see you tomorrow.